How's it going? All right.
Thank you.
So I can start?
Yep.
Okay. Well, why don't we start with a quick word of prayer, and then we will jump into our subject. Okay? Thank you, Father, for calling us to your service. May we always be faithful as you have been faithful to us. For it's in Christ we pray. Amen. We want to kind of look at, where do elders come from?
Sorry. I'm sorry. I just tripped on my own thing. I'm sorry. It's weird. I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's on the recording now. I'm sure that'll be here for a very long time. But sometimes the most common call E2 gets is, hey Jim, we have a problem, and the problem typically is stated as we just don't have anybody stepping up into the role of elder. We need new elders. We're either too few or too old, or we don't seem to have the skill set we need to have, and nobody's able to really step up into the role. And we will listen. I mean, we've met, we've talked about this, that we listen, we'll ask some questions, but ultimately the question we have to ask is, what do you do intentionally to raise up men to be elders in your church? And normally we get one of three answers. We either get can you repeat the question? Another one is we get a generic answer like, we send them to Sunday school and we give them a baptism certificate, we give them offering envelopes. Yeah, but that's not intentionally to raise somebody up to being an elder. And eventually we just hear the words, we've not done anything intentional. It's very much like the farmer who goes out into the field in October and it's completely empty and weed covered. And he says, I really should have been busy back in April, if I was expecting to get a harvest in October. And the simple fact is, you don't have a leadership problem, you have a discipleship problem. It's simply manifesting itself as a leadership issue, but you really have a discipleship issue. You have to make this an intentional matter for current elders. It's a difference of looking out in a field and seeing just weeds that grow on their own in any way, fashion, or form they want, as opposed to a cultivated, manicured, crop. Here you take whatever you're going to get. There what you seeded the ground to receive. And, this is a long-term process, not a quick, short-term fix. And I do put here, think farming, not manufacturing. Developing somebody into an eldership is not A plus B plus C and you get D. It's not, if I have this piece, and I hook them together, ta-da, they're there. It's more like farming, as in we're going to plant a seed, we're going to nurture the ground, we're going to tend to it, and over the course of months we're going to see growth, and then eventually we're actually going to see something produce on that, like an ear of corn. And we even measure it. And I know it used to be, it had to be knee high by the 4th of July, and now thanks to hybrids, it's shoulder. Okay, but the simple fact of the matter is, we have to think more that long-term commitment, and also something else. We need to really start thinking in terms of quality over quantity. I've had people say, we just don't have enough elders, and they're like, well, how many do you have? 12. Well, how big is your church? 200. And you want more? Yes, we want more elders. Okay, and then I look at another church that's running thousands, and they have only 15 elders, because the elder's task is very, very narrow, focused leadership. And the thing is, focusing on quality, having the right people, is more important than simply the number of people that is required to be on an elder board. So the first step, where do elders come from? First off, prepare men to become elders. Okay, prepare. They're not elders yet. What is your congregation's path toward discipleship? We have to mature people as believers in order to have people ready, have the maturity level to even be considered to become an elder. Okay, the simple fact is, you have to really prepare them to become elders by having a discipleship path. Now, if I can be very, very honest, we don't have time to really go into this extensively. It is a little bit built in the next hour. I do another workshop. But the simple fact is, if somebody said, Jim, what makes a healthy discipleship environment? And little footnote, I'm the equipping pastor at Heritage Christian Church in Fayetteville, Georgia. That's what I oversee. Somebody is literally out in the community. They don't even go to our church. What steps do we take from that to ordaining them or putting them in some kind of leadership role? And once again, that's a long-term process and commitment. First off, how do you engage non-believers in a constructive way? That's crucial. Then how do you, once you've built relationship with them, how do you present the gospel and evangelize? If they say, yes, I want to accept Christ, they get baptized, wonderful. But now how do you assimilate or incorporate them into your body? And that's an intentional process. That can't just be, well, what do you mean? Baptism brought them into the bride of Christ. They're part of us now. Yeah, I get that, but now your congregation is a little different. How do they get involved? How do they build relationships? How do they get instruction? How do they, what nurture do they receive as a new believer? Then instruction and service as they grow and we begin to get to know them better. Once again, how do we instruct them? How do we help get them into roles of service? And then if they are going to serve and such, and they are being instructed, and they begin to show the potential for leadership, how do we begin to identify them and move them into the appropriate level of leadership that they're gifted to be in? And so really the first, if you will, playbook you have to do is how do you mature someone from the baptistry to a full Christ likeness? What's your discipleship path? Now, if somebody here is saying, I don't want hands, okay? But if somebody goes, Jim, what if we don't have one of those? Thank you. That's the problem I'm talking about. That is usually the number one thing, is we don't have people ready to become elders because we're not really making people mature believers in the first place. And so going to a person who may have sat in a pew for 20 years and going, would you like to be an elder? No, I'm not, I don't think I'm ready for it. So you are going to have that discipleship path. Oh, sorry. By the way, here's the church I'm at. For example, we have our mission, that's our why, our values. Our strategy for that discipleship path is to connect, grow, serve, connect them to Jesus, grow with or through Jesus, and serve like Jesus. And then the tactics, see, that's the what. That's if somebody came to my church and they said, well, Jim, you have a worship service. Yep, you've got, Sunday school classes called Going Deeper, sure. But what role do they play in fulfilling the mission of the church? We can plug them into this chart and we understand what role they play. Develop a set of expectations. That's number 2. If you're going, do we have an elder job description? Now somebody can immediately knee-jerk and say, well, of course we do. 1 Timothy, Titus chapter 1. No, that's qualifications. That really doesn't tell me what the elders are expected to do. And so, it really outlines what kind of person are we looking for. And yeah, the qualifications may be there, but there's probably a little more to it. Remember, these aren't elders yet, they're potential elders. They're like saplings, if you will, okay? What are we trying to identify in them? They're not elders yet. They're just showing the potential. So what are we on the lookout for? That person could really make a great elder one day. They have the right stuff. For example, just let me give a couple of ideas. First off, does the person have a consistent Christian example? By the way, consistent participation. You heard Gary say, many people think, oh yes, I'm a full-time member of the church because I'm there 3 out of 8 weeks. Well, this person's probably there a whole lot more often, okay? Active service. They're already involved in the ministry of the church. Remember that discipleship stage, before they were ever considered for leadership, they were already studying at a deeper level and they were already serving in some capacity. Because see, if they're serving, it shows their heart. But number 2, what happens when you notice, hey, have you noticed the people that, even if the lawn care, so-and-so shows up early, stays late, when other people have questions about it, they go to him? he's already being identified as a what? Yeah. See, that's easy to start picking them out instead of looking through the pews and going, who cannot outrun us? Okay, that one's moving very slow. Yes. Okay. Relatively, relationally responsive. You want an elder to be someone who has a relational ability, who can connect with people. Because think of it, they're going to be the shepherds of the church. They need to have that skill. And peer recognition. Like I said, people recognize them as a leader already in their own area of service. In their, the smartest person in the class is this, the teacher that's teaching. This person does a great job. Gary Johnson has what he calls the call model. You look for people who have a confirmation of some kind, the abilities, the lifestyle, and the longing or desire to serve. So that number 2 is you kind of set up what is our expectations? What are we looking for in a potential elder? Well, do you have a description of potential elders? Who to be on the lookout for? And, by the way, I usually say write these things down, and I get the word, well, Jim, you were a professor, you still are a professor, so obviously you're trying to give us homework. Yes. But the reason is, by writing it down, you have to be able to, articulate it. It makes it consistent, so you don't have one person with one list and another with another list, and another person who doesn't have a list at all, except for just some internal feeling. This way it becomes very intentional. And by the way, as we're discussing potential candidates, we all are working off the same criteria. Engage the potential elder. Now, when I say engage, this is not going up and saying, hey, do you want to be an elder? No, they were simply potential. They're not yet there yet. This is where you engage by equipping them. Now, I want to look into each one of these because, little footnote, this is also how you continue to resource and equip existing elders. Does that make sense? So what I'm about to show you not only applies for potential, but also existing elders. This is going to go fast because I'm going to have a slide on each one of these. But you could invite them to study as a group. We're having a group Bible study, a group book study. Hey, would you like to join with us? You could assign a mentor. John, would you call up him and say, would you like to go out and get coffee? Just say, hey, I know you've been in the church. You're doing a great job. I've seen what you're doing. Just wanted to get together with you and just, would you mind being in a prayer relationship with me? Oh, well, sure. Yeah, why not? It's one-on-one. We've gotten to know each other. And now you begin that kind of relationship. Supervision, on-the-job training, so to speak, and self-directed kind of study. So I want to look into each one of those. Group study, the principal means of teaching in the entire history of the world is exactly what we're doing right here. We're in a classroom and it's a group study. But how much can you really learn about ministry or service or leadership sitting in a classroom? Not a lot. And that's my point. It is best used for orienting people, giving them information. Some kind of group study like in the pastoral epistles or Philippians or a given book. By the way, E2 is working on a product. Philippians is the only book of the New Testament addressed to elders. People don't realize that. Like the elders are mentioned elsewhere, but Philippians is said to the saints at Philippi and the overseers and deacons among them. Now, if I was an elder and somebody said, hey, we just got a letter from Paul, and it starts, to all the saints and the elders, what would your head do? You become a meerkat all of a sudden. It's kind of like popping up, hey, what? Because, see, here's the thing. Some of the messages are universal in that book. But when he says things like, be like Timothy and consider the needs of others before yourself. Well, every Christian should do that, but an elder, that's going to land on your ear a whole different way. Okay, all right, that means I've got to do, see what I'm getting at? So here's the thing. You don't invite them to study Elder 101, so to speak. You ask them to do what? Hey, would you like to do a Philippians Bible study with us? And you invite a couple of people to join you in a Bible study. See what I'm getting at? So they're just studying along. By the way, if you're going to do an elder retreat or an elder advance of some kind, invite them to go on it. The elders are going to do this. We just want to know if you go with us. We're just, We're going to go out there and have some conversation, read a book, do some study. We have a guest speaker, whatever. It's spiritual formation through community study. It helps you develop your mind, okay? Now, mentoring. This is pouring your life into someone else's. It takes on the form of like developing personal accountability. It connects discipleship and leadership in a very, very personal way. It's self-direction and formation. It's spiritual direction. I mean, you sit down with someone and you go, what do I need to pray for? How is your family doing? Let me share a little bit what I'm struggling with. Is there something I need to be praying for you about? It's that relationship building exercise as well. And it's fulfilling Paul's example. Follow my example as I follow the example of Christ. And when he wrote to Timothy, calling him my true son in the faith. This is really trying to say we're developing what educators call the affective domain, the values, the character of the individual. Now, supervision is that on-the-job training. Remember when you learned how to ride a bicycle? You started not with a bike, but you started usually with what? A trike. Hard to tip over a trike. I mean, you can try, but it's a little difficult. Thing is, then we put, what do we call it on the regular bicycle? We put on training wheels. And then you do what? Then if they kind of showed a little bit of balance, you'd kind of remove the right training wheel and you'd say, now just lean to the left if you have trouble. Hopefully they remembered left, okay? And then eventually you saw they were not needing the left, you removed the left, and now what? They're off. And that's the point. These were training wheels, and step by step you no longer needed my guidance. You could do it on your own. And so it really is spiritual formation through service. It's best accomplished by, accompanying an experienced other and watching, and then working with them, and then you doing it with them giving some feedback. Then you do it yourself, and then you're able to share that with others. By the way, my home church had a follow-up for guests. If a guest showed up at church on Sunday morning, we got, if they were willing to give us their name and address and such, a group of godly women would bake bread every Sunday afternoon. And it is piping hot, fresh, coming out of the oven, put immediately into a bag, sealed, brought to the church. We would show up at church about 5 in the evening, get the name of the person, okay, the Smith family, and they would take somebody along with them. So, for example, the guy I went with was named Bob. Bob goes up to the door and says, now, Jim, by the way, I was in high school, so I was Jimmy. Jimmy, watch what I do, okay, just follow my lead. Hi, my name's Bob. Hi, I'm Jimmy. Thank you for being our guest at Southern Acres Christian Church. So happy you were with us. We have this loaf of bread. Hopefully it arrived in time for dinner, hence the time of day we brought it to them. And, here it is. And there's some information about the church in there. If there is any question, there's contact information in there. Hope to see you back next Sunday. That had about an 86% success rate at somebody coming back for a second visit. They know they didn't get an extra loaf of bread, okay? That was not the reason. But the point being, and by the way, footnote, when the minister did it, the effectiveness was cut in half. It's like a car sale. If you're at a car lot and you're looking at a car and the guy comes running out of the dealership towards you and says, this is a great car, I can't wait to tell you about it. Okay, fine. But when he goes off back in the car lot and the person next to you who was looking at another car goes, by the way, I owned one of those for about 5 years, 10 years. It runs like a charm, still running, good car. Honestly, who do you listen to more? Yeah, the person's not trying to sell you a car. Non-Christians see the ministry staff as doing their job because it's what? Their job. But when you're a volunteer, it really, really, really does impact them. So here is my point. And by the way, somebody else who did this was Jesus. If you read the Gospel of Mark, he calls the 12 and he does all kinds of things, miracles and everything. They're just going, wow, that was impressive. Did you? Then he goes, okay, guys, I need your help. Come over here. Help me. Okay, do you see how I did it all? Okay, now you guys, I'm going to send you out 2 by 2. And then you're going to come back and you go, hey, guess what? We couldn't cast out that demon. Well, let me give you some instruction. Here's what happened. And at the end of Mark, what does he do? The Great Commission. Once again, it's the same pattern for that on-the-job training. And it's great at learning skills. Now, the self-directed part is this. Knowing how to teach myself, being that lifelong learner. It's personal development. It's keeping current with the changes in ministry, scholarship, society, culture. By the way, does anybody know the restaurant Cracker Barrel? Okay. I love going to Cracker Barrel because they have that little wheel that has all the years you can pull. I was born in 1963, so I pull that off, and I find out how much a house cost, a car cost, the big stories of the day. How much I think they always give how much it took to attend Harvard. If I'm correct, it's like $5,100 a year to attend Harvard. Astronomical, unheard of. Here's the point. I like doing that because it shows me that if I stopped thinking at that time about ministry, I would be ministering in an entirely different world. I graduated from college in 1985. I found a Newsweek magazine from 1985. The cover story was Today's Teens. On the cover was somebody who looked like Cyndi Lauper. Remember her? And a guy that I would never try to describe today because they don't exist anymore. That breed went out of existence. Okay, and that's my point. If I was a youth minister today, going, I studied in 1985 how to be a youth minister. Here's my target audience. Guess what? That target audience doesn't even exist. It'd be like saying we're going shooting for woolly mammoth. We'll find one. No, you're not going to. They're gone. You're ministering to an extinct animal. So the thing is, if you don't keep up, and that's what we've been talking about, innovation, change, study. If you don't keep up, then what ends up happening is your targeting is off. And by the way, you may go hunt in here. If a target is running, do you aim where it is or do you aim what? You lead. That's the point. That whole innovation thing, you look where they're going to be and shoot, not where they already were. And that's the point. This helps you stay up on where are they heading. I just have a 1-1-1-1 principle. Now, I say read one book per month. David, when he borrows this, we borrow each other's stuff all the time. David will say, can you read one book a year? Okay, if you get one book a year, could you read maybe one book every 6 months? Okay, could you get one book every 3 months? And he'll work it down to 1 month. I just go to 1 month immediately and say, and by if it's a thick thing, fine, 4 months, fine, you're covered. But I'm just going to try to be in an active, normal pattern of reading. Attend at least one conference per year. You can check that off right now. Subscribe to one Christian magazine or journal, Christianity Today, Christian Standard, something like that. And visit one healthy church per year. Find one that's maybe a little bit bigger than you or that's growing and you're not. By the way, what you're going to find is a lot of growing churches, most growing churches, it's not rocket science and it really isn't like some secret formula. They'll share it with you all the time. They'll hand out everything they have. I had an elder come up to me at my last conference. He said, Jim, you're kind of a discipleship minister, right? And I said, right. What do you do with new members? And I said, well, we have Discover Heritage and Explore Heritage. It's a 7-week study. This is a 1-week standalone that orients you to the church. Then it's a 6-week orientation to Christian living. Oh, I just wish we had something like that. That's what they want me to create. And I said, do you have a flash drive? Yeah. Send. And I said, you can't use this because it talks about heritage and heritage's vision, mission, values, ministries. But all you have to do is go through and what? Edit it out. And it's got lesson plans, handouts, PowerPoints, everything. Just take it. And here's the point. You'll find that they're like, you can go to them and they'll hand you the stuff. Okay? And what this does is it really accomplishes all the other learning objectives. It just keeps you fresh because you come back and you go, I saw them do this a different way than we've never done it before, but it was really impressive. Okay, cool. So here's the point. By the way, if somebody says, Jim, where did you get that from? I actually called a bunch of churches and said, how do you train elders? Now, none of them did all four. None of them really did all four. But they picked the one that best fit their circumstance. So my point is, this is your mix. But if you did do all four in some capacity, what would you have? Well, you'd have knowledgeable elders. You'd have very self-aware individuals in the eldership. That's why coffee is always involved, okay? You'd have a skilled and capable leadership because you've been training them on the job. And you'd have lifelong learners because what? They study on their own. They read on their own. They go to visit congregations on their own. And that's not a hard ask. You know, hey, you're on vacation. You're going to be going to Lexington. Visit Southland. It's one of our churches, runs 13,000. Go up there and just see how they do things. Look at what their welcome center looks like. See how they communicate announcements. Just see how, if there's anything there we can learn from. So the big thing is, what methods do you use to engage potential elders? You can pick 1, 2, 3, or all of these. And then you select the qualified candidate or candidates. So for example, here you have a bunch of potential elders, okay? And here you have the existing elders, and you go, you know, we've been spending time with them. Maybe we need 2 more elders. We don't want it to become so massive and huge that, you know, we have to use the choir room to have the meeting. And so what you do is you say, okay, we're going to ask so-and-so and so-and-so to step forward, and they're going to be our candidates. So does the elder team have a screening process or procedure for going, okay, of the potential elders that we've been spending time with, which ones are finally ready? By the way, this isn't a vote or an election or anything, because what would you do with the other 3? You just keep working with them. You know, they're maturing a little different. They're taking a little longer. That's okay. This isn't an election. You're not throwing them off the ballot. There is no ballot. You know, there's nothing like that. You're just keeping them in play. And then what do? Well, now you have to invite the candidates to serve as a leader. This is where you finally get around to going, hey, we need to have a little chat, because, you know, an initial contact with the candidates, hey, you know, we've been spending a lot of time with you and been very impressed. We've just seen you grow and mature. It's been fantastic. I'd like you to consider something, and I don't want an answer from you right now. I want you to considering to be an elder. Talk to your family, others, spend time in prayer. But I just want to know, would you be willing to have us sit down and ask and talk to you about this? Well, see, by this point, it's not a massive leap. It's what? It's a next step. You put them through a little orientation. By the way, what does an elder do? That's where an elder job description comes in handy. That's where we have expectations for potential elders, because it's going to lead to fulfilling the expectation we have for our elders. And just a little note, that job description comes out of Scripture, but it also comes out of practical necessity. Nowhere in Scripture does it say elders have to have a meeting. And all God's people said, Amen. All right. And I'm just kind of going, it's just, but meetings, we have to have those. Yes, we do. And by the way, therefore, there's probably some expectations even beyond the Bible that we just practically have for people. A vetting process, that could be a questionnaire, interview, meeting with the elders. Okay, I mean, all of this. And then there's selection. By the way, part of this could also involve their family. You might want to talk to the elder's spouse. Are you really ready for your husband to be gone? I mean, like, for example, driving up here last night, I got to miss the elders meeting that started at 6 and let out at 1. And that was a normal elders meeting. I know that because my lead pastor called me when he got out of the meeting. It woke me up, just to give me the lowdown on what happened. But the simple fact is, once again, asking them, do you realize what you're committing yourself to? Selection, you really, if they say, yeah, I want to do this, Well, whatever selection process you have to go through, great. I'd love to be more specific, but so many bylaws say something different. Seriously, I just kind of go, okay. So does your elder team have a vetting process and procedure to follow so that you're consistent year in and year out? And then finally, number 6, affirm their selection. That usually involves some kind of introducing them to the congregation, some kind of affirmation protocol. Now by that I mean we either take a vote on the candidate or we take a vote on the elder selection, like a show of approval for the elder's choice. Sometimes it does not even involve the congregation. You'll find that in much larger congregations, there is no congregational vote because, frankly, the elders are a self-perpetuating board that is driven by the mission, and it isn't a member-driven church. Therefore, it can't become a popularity contest. It's not, well, I just don't know so-and-so. But the elders are aware of that individual, and they've been training them and vetting them for 2 years. So yeah, this person's ready. There's usually some kind of symbolic element. There can be. I put a question mark there. At Heritage, where I serve, if you become an elder, you're brought up, there is the laying on of hands, and then you receive a shepherd's crook. We order them from Amazon. Okay. And it's a shepherd's crook. Yeah, it is. It's prime. It's there in 2 days. That way, if we make a quick selection, we can still get it there in time. But literally, like, they get a shepherd's crook. There's a church in California that goes a little far out. They actually order a sword with the elder's name on it, bring them forward, and knight them in front of the congregation. It's California. Okay. And then perpetual equipping and resourcing using those 4 methods mentioned before. They're still going to be involved in group study. They're still going to be mentoring and being mentored. They're still going to be, self-learning and on-the-job training, learning new skills. So the thing is, how do you affirm new elders? What's the actual way and the symbolic way you do this? And so there's really the 6 steps here: develop, prepare, engage, select, invite, affirm. But notice what's at the end of each word. Ing. This is an ongoing process. This is not a one-time thing. This is not a one-time thing. See, if it becomes a one-time thing, crisis averted, we have new blood in the eldership, thank you very much, and 10 years later, my successor at E2 is picking up the phone going, hello, same problem we called you about 10 years ago, we don't have anybody ready. Well, it's because you stopped doing what? Yeah. It's just like farming. If you don't plant next year, you're not going to have a crop. But I planted the previous year. Yep. That's not how it works. You got to plant every year. Okay. Now, how can E2 help? And that, by the way, it's just my favorite picture of us out at a restaurant. We have resources to help on all of this, and hence it's out there on the table. We have, video consults. For example, if you said, well, Jim, we don't want to call you all in. We just want to have somebody, one of the 3 of you, talk to our leadership team, come in and teach a lesson for an hour. Well, don't fly us in, put us up in a hotel, pay for meals and travel and everything else. Just say, hey, can you video chat with us for an hour? Can you video chat with us for 2 hours over a internet connection? Seminars, 1 and 2 day seminars that we can come in and do for your church. Or I've had a church go, hey Jim, what if we invited 3 or 4 other churches? Is that okay? Sure. In fact, if I know they're going to be there, I'll design breakout sessions where we go, okay, we just talked about something, sit in circles with your church group and discuss what I just said, and then we'll move to point number 2. Okay, time out, take 10 minutes to process what I just said. What are you thinking about in your church? It's fine. 1 or 2 day seminars. Coaching and consulting, those are much larger commitments. We all do it a little different. I do it in 3 different visits that are 2 to 3 days each. And it's basically come in and assess where you at, develop some kind of prognosis. This is what has to happen. And then the third is helping you develop an actual plan to get it done, like actual tactics, measurement, what we're going to do. Partnership congregations, some churches really do I don't know, connect with E2 and say, we understand what you're trying to accomplish. We want to become part of it. We don't have a membership. It's not like a club, but they count us as a mission. So just like you give to a mission organization, E2 becomes their mission. And they support us so that we can go do work with other churches and provide services. And so we become a missionary to that church. And hence, just like a missionary, we will send reports, come back and visit you, talk to you, give service and such. So we have about 7 minutes before I think we're supposed to be done. Any questions, comments, confusions?
Quick, so whenever you're preparing the men, you're not actually making them aware that, hey, we're grooming you for a potential elder position?
It depends on the church and the individual. You could say, hey, this is just a Bible study. If they say, I'll give you an illustration. Heritage, where I'm at, just did an E2 event, last weekend. We intentionally ask elders, think of someone who could succeed you in several years. Invite them to the E2 event, but don't tell them it's because you might be succeeding them on the elder board. Just say, hey, we're having these guys come in. It's a great opportunity. It's about leadership. Do you want to come? Sure. Okay, we had about 5 guys show up who were not elders, but wanted to be there. By the way, that was also pretty indicative. Okay, if they're willing to show up, it shows something about their desire, their interest, their willingness to step up. Okay. So yeah, now if somebody looked at us and said, so this is for elder training, am I being considered as an elder? I could look them right in the face and say, no, you're not a candidate. Why? Because that's a different step. Potential is one thing. Candidate's a different. We see you as having potential. One day, sure. But, right now, we see you as having the potential to be it. I did tell that to one of the guys, and he went, you're serious. You think I could become an elder? And I was like, well, we've been praying about it a lot. And he laughed, and I said, well, yes, but, once again, even you're acknowledging maybe years from now. And I said, precisely. We want to start you. But coolest thing, David and I went to Bergholz, Ohio. Now, has anybody ever heard of Bergholz? I am not surprised. My GPS shut off 3 times driving there due to loss of signal. And the only people that know about it are people that live there and airline pilots. And that sounds strange, but I'm the church that David mentioned about having all the airline pilots is the one I'm serving at. We have Delta and Southwest pilots just like crazy all over. And I said, have you ever heard of Bergholz? And he went, oh yeah, if you're flying into Pittsburgh, Bergholz, Ohio is where the signal is, the transponder you lock onto, and once you've locked on, hang a right, head east, and you're in Pittsburgh. So that's only 2 people that know where this city is. So we put a church camp there. So David and I show up, and it's an elder training thing, big weekend. They're coming in the vans. And we see one van have a bunch of teenagers get out. And we're like, well, maybe these are people who are going to be working in the kitchen. Maybe they're working in the cleaning up the dorms while everything's going on. But no, they were sitting there, and after the first session, David went up and said, hey guys, we're really glad you all are here. You look real young for elders. And one of the elders from that church said, yeah, actually they're potential elders. Wow. We're bringing them all the way from the time they're in high school to start them in the pipeline. If they're not an elder in the church we're in, whatever church they end up in, we want them to be equipped. And I'm like, this is pretty amazing. So, yeah.
What kind of feedback do you get from switching from that board type election process to just being an elder mission-led where they're going through vetting and all that?
Sure. I wish I had a clear-cut path for that, because it really does depend what's in the bylaws. And I hate to bring up bylaws, but once again, they are typically the albatross around the neck of most churches. Well, like for example, we in our bylaws it says we have to alert certain groups that don't even exist in our church anymore. And things like using the church mailing list, send a letter. We don't even have a church mailing list. We do everything digital now. I mean, you realize these bylaws were sold. They didn't even say email the congregation, because email didn't exist. I'm really surprised sometimes it doesn't say, find the Pony Express, hand them the letter. Great, catch the train. Okay, but the simple fact of the matter is, we do have a document called Transitioning to Elder Governance that talks about the rationale for moving from the typical traditional church board structure to what's called elder governance. And it's free. It's on our website. If you go to e2elders.org and it says resources, click, a drop-down menu will say free, click, and sure enough, there is a document that says elder governance, and there's even a 15-minute, a sample of our E2 talks that's on that topic. Gary is the expert at that. I've taken a couple of churches through it, and it's gone okay. But Gary really is very, very smooth with it. Because, I hate to put it this way, but that member-driven church model, see, this is really interesting because I found a book on this, and it isn't even from our movement, but it says, how do you have an elder-led congregational church? And we have people who go, we're congregational churches. And I'm like, no, we're not. Yes, we are. We're independent congregations. That doesn't mean congregational. Congregational church means they vote on everything. I mean, I have a friend who's at a congregational church that has a monthly congregational meeting where the entire congregation is the board. And they vote on paying bills. They vote on maintenance things. They vote on everything. I know some of you are going about ready to go, okay, but I'm going, that's what he's about ready to do, okay? And his point, he says, because they've appointed elders, but they don't empower them to do what an elder in the New Testament does. Yet in the New Testament, we see, independent local congregations, but under the leadership of what? Elders. And so it is an elder-led congregational model. And we see some churches that really cling to that elder or the congregational leadership and won't give it up, and therefore everything becomes democratic. And from what I can tell, and okay, footnote, if you're interested in this, email me, okay? I wrote an article for Christian Standard back in 91 called Thus Saith the Board. And it's basically, where did the church board even come from in our movement? Campbell never talks about it. Stone never talks about it. The next generation of leader in our movement never uses the word board. How do I know? I read every single book and Christian Standard published.
So what's the answer to that question? How did it happen?
Turn of the 20th century, when American business culture was really taken off, all of a sudden people started talking about boards. It was just mentioned. And then there was somebody raising the question, well, what exactly is the role of the minister? Because if they're not an elder and they're not a deacon, how do you draw the organizational chart? I have a whole chapter in one of our books on that whole issue and how that became one of the brouhahas. Well, then all of a sudden, when we started saying churches should set up like businesses, we allowed business culture to dictate the structure, and businesses have bylaws and annual meetings. And guess what? All of a sudden, we started having annual meetings, bylaws, and in the article, I basically say, we're going to have to make a hard decision whether we're going to treat believers like stockholders or Christians. Because right now, the way we're governing them is much like stockholders, with the whole structure being a business structure.
You got to please the stockholders.
You got to please those stockholders. If they get upset,
Instead of the CEO.
bingo. And that's the problem. Yeah, please.
Jim, with E2s advising congregations on how to develop elders, so many congregations have so many men that have been divorced.
Yeah.
That are good leaders,
Mm-hmm.
well-qualified Christian men,
Mm-hmm.
solid. What's E2's advice, or what's your stand on having men that have been divorced serve as elders?
Oh my, look at the time. We're overdoing it. No, okay. No, actually, we do address that. I'm going to give two answers. And by the way, if you're interested, I wrote an entire article on that as well. On can the divorcee be the husband of one wife? And the answer is a definite maybe. No, because here's the thing: you have to ask. It's too. That's a very like overarching question. And so, for example, if I said, "Yeah, but what happens if the divorce occurred before they were a believer?" See, there's too many circumstantial pieces where you go, it cannot be just a flat yes or no. By the way, what happens if it was a biblical divorce? What happens if the wife left him?
We've got elders in churches all over that used to be heavy drinkers.
Sure.
Brawlers.
Yeah, and so what happens if it happened 20 years ago? See, that's just it. What happened 20 years ago, and the person's matured and grown, they've remarried, they've established a family, and you met them, and you go, oh, he was married, and you're shocked. Well, yeah, because they're an example of a Christian, you know. And then, by the way, the whole thing of what does husband of one wife mean, or in Greek it's one woman man.
So you're still sticking with me.
Yeah, no, but here's the thing. I don't have a problem with someone saying, okay, this person's been divorced. Does that automatically disqualify them? No. Would I want to at least explore what that was before saying yes? You know, like, has he been divorced? Yes. Okay, well, that's okay. We'll just let him become an elder. By the way, what was it? Well, I went to Vegas and had, a little too much to drink, and, woke up with, 3 people. Oh, wait, okay, never mind. We're going to stop right there. Hey, now we have a story to tell. Okay, that might be something where we go, time out, this is not good. That's why I don't think it's an automatic. I don't think it is, we joke, it's become practically, for some churches, the unforgivable sin. I'm like, no, that's not it at all. And that's why I go, it does not automatically disqualify, but as with any issue, we want to do what? Yeah, I'd like to do very good due diligence, ask a few questions, probe a little bit. I was on a search committee in a church where the man was up for elder, he was divorced, and we met with his new wife, his second wife, and said, can you talk to us about this? Well, I met him years after he was divorced. I never had met the other person, et cetera. Okay. We talked to him. He goes, yes, she just literally left me and left the kids with me, and I tried to reconcile, and she would not, and just all this. Okay. How are you doing? Because we don't want to put a person in there who still is feeling, you never get over the pain. But, you're still dealing with it. It's right up in, no, I've gone through counseling. I'm good. Okay, what reason do we have to hold this mark against this individual? So.
But Jim, what you're proposing isn't just a picking elders thing. You're talking about discipleship. And
Yeah.
through the discipleship process, you get to know somebody.
Exactly.
And so that should be just.
And that's just it. So, see, that's just it. Using this model,
Right.
by then you would know all that. And you could automatically, see, there's the thing. If there was a real serious issue.
Been a lot of good leadership resources passed over the years.
Exactly.
Because of the student.
Exactly. And as you put it, and by the way, if it happened, let's say 20 years ago, I keep using 20. What happens if somebody got drunk 20 years ago? He got, oh, well, too bad. It was inhospitable. Oh, well. Well, no, we don't. That was another thing. I said, we're going to treat all the qualifications equally. Not say, oh, well, this one's the one that if it ever happened, ever, you're out. The rest of them, we can slide on. That's not fair. So I have all these resources. If you want to email me, and how? I just put it jim@e2elders.org. And if you want to call me, that's my office number. No problem. Have fun.